Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we are going to be customizing my e.l.f. face palettes. You have probably seen these little 4-pan palettes from e.l.f. and I'm surprised that a lot of people don't realize that you can pop out the powders and switch them around. So if you have 2 or 3 of these little palette guys, then you can switch around the powders to customize the perfect palette for you. Thankfully, I did not film myself popping the little pans out because it is not really that easy. If you think about it, that's a good thing because you know that the powders are really secure inside the palettes. But to remove the powder, you can see the back of the pan here. You just push on this part of the square, and I just used my thumb and pushed through the back. It's not really the easiest thing to do. There were some casualties. As you can see here, I did mess up a couple of my powders. I took a big chunk out of this one, and you probably can't tell, but I ripped off a bunch of the nail polish off of my thumbnail. So don't do this with a fresh manicure, but I still think it's worth it. I think it's gonna be so fun to customize these palettes, and I've been thinking about it for the past few days. How do I wanna arrange them? So let's start customizing. I have 3 of these palettes that I'm going to be trading the pans around in. I have the contouring palette, the light blush palette, and the illuminating palette. First up, I have my contour palette, and I have removed all of the shades except for the contouring powder. I want this to be my kind of go-to palette. I like the contouring powder the most out of all the powders that were in this particular palette. They're all pretty good. The bronzer's a little bit too orange for me, so if I'm being completely honest, if I'm gonna travel or something, I'm going to take a different bronzer. So I removed the bronzer. I also removed the highlight and the setting powder. The setting powder is a banana shade, so it works better for me when I'm really tan. But right now, my skin's super fair, so it's a little bit too yellow for me. But I'm going to make this the perfect palette for me right now. The first thing I'm adding is this really kind of bronzy blush from the blush palette. And to put this in place, you just place the pan in and then push down on the sides and you'll hear it click in. Did you hear the click? Next, I'm gonna take the 2 lightest shades from the illuminating palette. These work really well for me on my winter complexion. So these are gonna be in my go-to palette, and I really like the way these look when they're mixed together. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, why did you take the highlight shade out that was in the contour palette? Doesn't this look exactly the same as the light shade that's in the illuminating palette? And at first glance, these pans do look identical, but when you touch the powders, they are very different. You can kind of tell on my finger here, this is the one from the contouring palette and this is the one from the illuminating palette. This one from the contouring palette is really, really opaque and really white. That's from the contouring and this is from the illuminating. See how much like whiter this one is? I just find that the really opaque white highlighter doesn't look that great on me. It kind of looks like a stripe instead of like a soft glowy highlight, which is what I prefer. So I'm switching the pan over from the illuminating palette along with the more pinky tone shade. I'm just gonna pop those in. I really like the way that these 2 lighter highlights look when they're blended together. They're both really pretty, but I think mixed together, they just have that perfect glow that I'm looking for. I'll show you how they look mixed together. So that's the whiter one, and that's the pinker one. And it was really just that easy. The hardest part was deciding which powders to put where. Now I have a palette that I can throw in my bag that has highlight, blush, and contour. And since this blush is more of a kind of orangey, earthy tone, when I use this, I don't really feel like I need to use bronzer. I can just use this blush and then contour, and it really warms up my face without having to have another powder. When the warmer weather starts to roll around, the sun is out, and my face is more tan, then obviously I'll need different shades to complement my skin tone. and I'm going to create a summer palette. This is the illuminating palette, and it has the 2 deeper highlighting shades. And when I say deeper, I mean they're deeper than the lighter 2 shades. These really, unfortunately, I don't think are gonna work that well for dark skin tones. These are the swatches of the 2 darker highlight shades. Unfortunately, I think that they're probably only suited to more medium skin tones, which is what I'll be when I'm tan. I wish that e.l.f. would come out with a deep illuminating palette, just like they did with the blush. They did a light and a deep palette. So hopefully they'll come out with that for us. But for now, these are the shades that are gonna work for me to highlight with in the summer. And in the summer months, I will be able to use the setting powder, my poor destroyed setting powder, because this is a little bit more of a banana shade. It'll work best for me when I'm tan. So I'm gonna add that to my palette. Just click it right in. I'm also gonna add this kind of shimmery strawberry blush from the blush palette. I think that this is most flattering on me when I have a bit of a tan, so it's going to go into my summer face palette. And my summer face palette is finished. I have a setting powder, a bright blush, and then 2 kind of medium toned highlighters. So once I start to get a tan, I can reach for this palette and I can have so many of my must-haves all in one. I just added the remaining 2 pans into the blush palette, so they're safe and sound, and when I'm ready to rearrange my palettes again, they'll be right here waiting for me. Now my go-to face palette and my summer face palette are all set, and just depending on what kind of look I want, I can grab one and go. I also debated doing like a warm toned and a cool toned palette. I think that would be another great way to separate and customize your palettes. I wanna know, have you tried this? Do you wanna try it? How would you organize your palettes? I always love to hear what your guys' thoughts are, so leave a comment and let me know. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. I hate myself when I do intros. What? Okay. Okay. Powders that were in this particular palette. And I really like to add... What the heck are you talking about? Then maybe I will have...